Russian missiles flattened a residential building in the city of Zaporizhia, killing at least 2 people and trapping many more under the rubble. In Lyman, Ukrainian teams are trying to make the area safe after Russian troops left landmines behind.
At least 17 people have died and more are presumed missing after 2 boats sank in separate incidents in Greek waters.
At least 2 people were killed when 7 Russian rockets slammed into residential buildings in the southeastern city of Zaporizhia in Ukraine this Thursday, and at least 5 people were trapped under the rubble. The strikes came just hours after Ukraine announced the country's military had retaken 3 Russian-occupied villages. The city of Zaporizhia is the administrative center of the region of the same name that Russian President Vladimir Putin annexed in violation of international laws on Wednesday and is home to a nuclear power plant that is under Russian occupation.
Ukrainian forces are still gaining territory, albeit a little more slowly as they continue their advance in the Kherson region. But the clashes are inflicting heavy damage. After recapturing Lyman, the main Russian bastion in the north of Donetsk province, electricity, water and natural gas services remain cut off. Russian troops have also left dangerous landmines behind on a road near Lyman. Ukrainian demining teams are trying to make the area safe. In the days after Ukrainian troops pushed Russian forces out of the area, residents are queuing for food and medical aid.
It was bad. I couldn't stand the Russian fascists anymore. They brought their flags and everything, but we don't need it. They kept driving down my street in tanks and fuel tankers. I hated it.
The Ukrainian police are now back in town and now will rebuild and help people get back to peaceful lives.
What now? I have no windows. Who hit us? The Russians or our guys? No one was caught red-handed, and now the winter is coming.
In Moscow, following Russian President Vladimir Putin's signing of laws ratifying the annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions, the president has now issued a decree to put the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant under Russian jurisdiction. In the face of its setbacks on the battlefield, Moscow is continuing its mobilization of conscripts. About 200,000 have been signed up and are being sent off for military training.
President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly cautioned the West that any attack on Russia could provoke a nuclear response. Some analysts say he's bluffing, but Washington is taking the Russian leaders seriously. Euronews talked to Nikolai Sokov from the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation.
Nuclear weapons actually have more utility when they're not, in fact, used, when you threaten their use. But once you cross the threshold, the situation changes. So it would be really best to avoid that situation. And in fact, so far, even though we've seen a lot of nuclear blustering on the side of Moscow, we have not seen any practical steps that might suggest that Russia is preparing to use nuclear weapons. The more likely scenario is a nuclear test, but not in the Black Sea. No, that's quite actually nonsense. The nuclear test would be at the regular nuclear test site on Novaya Zemlya, very much in the north of Russia, big island in the Arctic. The West has to steer a very kind of delicate line between, on the one hand, fully supporting Ukraine, on the other hand, not directly getting involved in the war. I would say that Joe Biden, the US President Joe Biden, has actually been doing quite a good job so far. Yes, and I think that we do have a very good actually chance to get through this crisis without seeing nuclear use.
Rescuers are lowering ropes down to the seafront in Lesbos, a desperate attempt to try and pull survivors to safety. A second boat has sunk in Greek waters in less than 24 hours. Tragically, 17 bodies have been recovered. 10 people have been rescued. Greek authorities say they have recently seen a sharp increase in attempted migrant entries through the country's islands and land border with Turkey. In Kavitha, 80 people have been rescued after a boat broke and sunk just off the island. Others are presumed to be missing. Residents reportedly ran out of their homes to try and help. Local authorities say a nearby school is opened to provide shelter to those pulled ashore. Navy divers are expected to continue searching the area for survivors on Thursday. Financial analysts say parity between the US dollar and British pound is now a possibility, with more than a 50-50 chance of it happening this year. The euro has been in parity with the US dollar for a few weeks now, and the Japanese yen has also lost value against the American currency. The sterling is the third strong currency to plunge to a historic low, facing the almighty US dollar.
U.S. President Joe Biden visited the southwestern town of Fort Myers in Florida, left devastated after the passage of Hurricane Ian. The U.S. death toll from the storm has risen to at least 109 people. The trip was marked by a surprising truce between Biden and his Republican critic and potential 2024 presidential candidate, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
A Japanese journalist has been sentenced to 10 years in prison in military-ruled Myanmar. Toru Kubota was arrested in July for recording a flash protest against the junta, which ousted elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi last year. The junta has arrested thousands, including politicians, students, journalists and foreigners, as it attempts to smother dissent.
Lev Kamyshev looks through photos in his temporary Istanbul apartment after escaping out of Russia. He decided to leave a day after President Vladimir Putin's call for mobilization.
I was scared. I was devastated. I left everything I had. I'm empty inside.
This is part of his 26-hour journey to Istanbul. Lev first crossed Kazakhstan by foot because he was too afraid to face Russian authorities at the airport.
I just wanted to save my life. Of course, I don't think that's fair. I think that my government left me no choice.
Authorities in Istanbul estimate about 10,000 people from Russia have flown into the city since the mobilization announcement. And in the Antalya region in Turkey, an official reportedly said 1,800 Russians arrived there within the first few days. Flights to Turkey have often sold out since the conscription call, but it's impossible to know how many are coming to avoid the call-up. Some European Union governments say that such men wouldn't be welcomed in their countries. Lithuania's foreign minister says his country wouldn't grant asylum to what he stated were people simply running from responsibility. He tweeted that they should fight Putin in Russia. The UN's refugee agency told Euronews that people seeking asylum should be supported wherever and whoever they are.
If you are staying and you fight, you also can be mobilized. You can be killed in a police department.
Lev is hoping to get asylum in Germany. The German government didn't respond to Euronews' request for comment about whether it would grant asylum to men fleeing Russian military service. Euronews spoke to another Russian man who had fled to Turkey last week. He said he was against the war, and he left because he was afraid he'd be forced to fight. He later told Euronews he was too afraid for his interview to be aired, even with his identity hidden. As for Lev, he says he wants to go back to Russia after the war.
We want to be those men at the end of the war who didn't shoot. We will return, we will build a new Russia, we will help to rebuild Ukraine.
Christina Chovanovsky, Euronews.